It's the Blood Red podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo here on the Blood Red channel. Liverpool sending out an early title warning, blasting away Arsenal at Anfield. Super Sadio, terrific Trent, delightful Diogo. We'll look back on the win over Arsenal as Klopp's men outline their hunger to defend their title. Alongside myself, Guy Clarke, our chief LFC writer, Ian Doyle, Joe Rimmer and Sean Bradbury. Gentlemen, how are we all after a terrific win over Arsenal? Doyle, come to you first.
I'm fine. I mean, how did you enjoy seeing Arsenal lose?
Yeah, enjoyed being the optimal word. Joe, how are we?
I'm very good, thanks, Guy. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely terrific, absolutely fantastic. Sean, yourself?
Yeah, I kind of feel you need an arm around the shoulder to get you through this one, but treat us like a little support group. We'll get you there.
I have to say, though, obviously, you're making reference and taking the mick out of me there being on the other side of the fence for this one. But Doyle, being at Anfield, it was really a performance of champions, a complete showing from Liverpool in many ways.
Well, especially the first half. I thought in the first half that was comparable to anything Liverpool did last season. Interesting, Mikel Arteta kind of made a suggestion of that after the game. I think he was speaking to Sky and he said that Liverpool have such quality. We press them high. He says, but Van Dijk gets the ball, it's at 60 yards diagonal to Salah, and they're out with the press and they're away. And that's what Liverpool were doing all the way through the first half. They were just finding all the answers to the questions that Arsenal were posing. And I mean, the second half, because Arsenal were behind, they had a little bit more of a go. I mean, they got into Liverpool half a few times. So it was better from their point of view. But the thing there is that it just opened up even more space for Liverpool. Had it finished 5 or even 6-1, I don't think anybody would have complained. That's not to say Arsenal were terrible, because they weren't. In fact, I thought they played all right. For me, Liverpool won the area where they didn't win at the Emirates, and certainly didn't win at the Community Shield in the first half at least, and that was the midfield. I thought the midfield were excellent. I'm sure we'll come on to that at some point. There was no Thiago there, and it's if the three that were in there went, well, hang on, we better start playing, but this is a great opportunity for us to show just how good that we are. And you've also got to bear in mind Jordan Henderson wasn't there either, so you had the skipper wasn't there. The main signing of this summer, this was exactly the kind of game with a deep line defence that Thiago was meant to have been brought in to play in. And Liverpool blew Arsenal away. And given the fact that they've now played, a decent promoted team in Leeds, they've won at Chelsea, they've now beaten Arsenal. I think if you'd have said before the start of the season, Liverpool will get 9 points from 9 from the first 3 games, you'd say even 7 would have been a very good return. But to get 9, that shows you that, once again, Liverpool are the team to beat.
Yeah, it shows the levels, Joe, that Liverpool play at. As Doyle said there, I think everyone was looking at those first 5 games of the season thinking, well, Liverpool surely can't win the opening 5 games. They've made it 3 from 3 so far, and they do look like they're just picking up exactly where they started last season.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about when they came back from lockdown, and there was some questions about Liverpool looking slightly rusty, perhaps not as good as they were pre-lockdown. But, I mean, this season they've started and they look as good as they were at their very best last season. I mean, yesterday's performance last night, the first half, as Doyle says, was just it was just such an assured performance. Even when they fell behind from another gift, we only gift Arsenal goals, it seems, but when they fell behind from a gift, I don't think anyone was worried. I think it was just a bit of a shrug of shoulders and carry on, because Liverpool will get the goals. And you look at the 3 teams that have played them have all tried slightly different things. Leeds tried to attack Liverpool, and Liverpool overcame them. Chelsea decided to try and sit in. Liverpool overcame them. And then Arsenal, I think, tried to press them a little bit more and counter-attack, and Liverpool overcame them. So, I mean, it's such impressive stuff. And already you have to look at the league and go, well, Man City have lost and shown weakness. Manchester United have shown weakness. Arsenal have shown weakness. Chelsea have shown weakness. And Liverpool haven't shown any weakness yet. Albeit we won't call them sloppy things, because we know Klopp gets upset, that they've conceded goals, but I don't think there's too much to be concerned about. Last night's was a total gift. Leeds was a very strange game, but other than that, they've looked so good. Yeah, Liverpool, if they carry on like this, they might find themselves even further clear.
Yeah, it takes some believing, but it really is sort of something that you could see happening, Sean. I suppose one of the real intriguing things about this Liverpool side that we've said for a while, though, is how they really can turn it on at any time against any kind of opposition. Joe alluding to it there. Doesn't matter what the game plan of the opposition is. Liverpool are better at it than what the opposition are.
Oh, 100%. I'd agree with the lads. It was hugely satisfying. One of the most complete performances I can remember for quite a while, both in terms of technical level, but I think hunger as well. Like Roy Keane and Carragher and others have made this point, but like Liverpool just looks so up for it in these first few games, and you combine that with their quality, and you've got what looks at this point, although it's like a recipe to defend their title successfully. But yeah, just the range of passing, the different angles of attack, the pressing, it was all on show. It was all relentless, irresistible. And I think in the context of this week as well, we'll come on to individual performances, but Jota off the bench and other individuals, it's just such a great time to be a Liverpool fan. You can savour this first team doing what they're doing and what we've seen them doing for the past couple of seasons. But there's a big squad as well, and I think that's going to keep the players in the kind of first team on their toes. But it's going to mean success in multiple competitions and going to far reaches of the domestic cups. I think, like you said, in terms of the different opposition that have been played so far, you're looking at Chelsea and Arsenal as two of the teams who are, all right, not potentially touted as title challengers, but certainly teams who should be knocking around the top 3, 4, getting Champions League places. And they've both been beaten fairly comfortably by a margin of a couple of goals. And like Joe said, okay, there were moments. Andy Robertson will regret what happened. He'll regret his assist for Arsenal's goal. But every single area of the pitch, I thought, excelled. Every individual player contributed. And that's why it was so complete. And as well, the last point, we briefly mentioned Thiago already, but all the chat in the build-up to it was about him and whether he'd be fit, whether he'd feature. I think just because people want to see him play, don't think he's a new signing. He's a world-class player. But the midfield pretty much just silenced that conversation. That wouldn't quite go as far to say I'd forgotten Liverpool signed Thiago afterwards, but you certainly think the level of control that they were able to exert over that football match yesterday without him, it's very, very exciting when the international break finishes to see what he can do when you put him in that team, as well as the lads on show last night.
I think what Liverpool have to do as well is make the most of these opening weeks, because they have got tough fixtures, but you've seen what's happened at City. But City will get better. United will probably make a few more signings and they'll get better. Chelsea's signings will bed in, but Liverpool and Tottenham will certainly be a much different team to the one that played against Everton on the first day of the season and lost. So I think they've just got to get these points on the board, and also because we don't want to be too negative about things, but if it turns out that they don't finish the season, the more points you've got at the start of it, the better, because then you've got more chance of actually winning something. So it's all about getting these points on the board when they can, and in the process, as Sean said, they just sent a reminder to two of the main or bigger rivals that there's still a big gap between Liverpool and those teams.
Yeah, and on that then, with all the other rivals, Joe, is it a case of, we see obviously in France and Germany how PSG and Bayern Munich, it's almost a monopoly over the league, and without getting too carried away after 3 games in the season, if Liverpool do start as fast as they have done and continue this, and Man City don't sort of keep the pace, are Liverpool sort of threatening the rest of the Premier League to take it away from them and actually turn the Premier League into a bit of a monopoly?
I wouldn't say that. I think that's a bit premature, because look, Liverpool have won 1 league in 30 years, and that they to do it back to back would be a phenomenal achievement. Probably a lot of people's wildest dreams, but look, I mean, Liverpool seem 1 step ahead of the game in terms of pretty much every area at the moment. Coaching, I think you take their nearest rivals and you look City, and they've got more money to spend. They've been investing more heavily every summer, yet they still can't solve the same problems that have haunted them now for 18 months, which is their defence. And Liverpool seem to have solutions to pretty much every issue, and it seems to be recruiting well for the future at the same time. So I don't think we can talk about monopolies, but Liverpool are in such a healthy position that the other clubs will be looking at them, and they'll be green with envy, because Liverpool just don't seem to have too many weaknesses. But look, there's a lot of money in the Premier League, and I think the difference between Liverpool and those other teams that you mentioned, Bayern Munich's rivals don't quite have the money that Bayern Munich have. La Liga, Juventus, Barcelona and Real Madrid have more money than all of their rivals. So again, there isn't too much to challenge them, and the same for Juventus in Italy. So, I think Liverpool are in a slightly different position in the sense that Chelsea and City and United will always invest, and things can always change on the back of such heavy investment. But right now, Liverpool hold all the cards, and They just look every area. They look such an excellent club, so well run, and that must really make their rivals fume.
Yeah, Joe, you're just about hanging in there like City, hopefully in this title race for them with your internet connection there. But Sean, looking then into some of the individual performances picked out in the intro, Sadio Mane, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Diogo Jota. I mean, personally, looking at Sadio Mane, this start of this season, he just every year seems to improve and get better and better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can make a strong case for him being the most important signing of the Klopp era, given that he was like one of the first major ones and was such a key building block to the team. I totally agree with you. His goal return and his contributions, they pretty much have improved year on year. And to be honest, I was actually like slightly worried about him last night, certainly at the start, because he was so wound up and he came out like a man possessed. There was like that little incident with Bellerin and then obviously the raising of the arm. So he was walking a bit of a tightrope for the rest of the game, but he was just phenomenal. And this is going to sound like a slightly mad shout, but there was a 15 to 20 minute spell where he reminded me, not in terms of his position or anything, but he reminded me of Gerrard in the sense of just absolutely on an individual level taking the game by the scruff of the neck. And it was just like every time he looked up, he was on the ball or he was trying to win the ball. He was taking it forward. He was fashioning a chance. He's just absolutely brilliant. So yeah, from worrying about him to then him arguably being man of the match, it was just 80 minutes to save it.
Yeah, I couldn't believe he came off, Doyle. Certainly, Diogo Jota came on, didn't embarrass himself, but Sadio Mane, on Sean's point there, really did sort of seem to take the game beyond Arsenal, sort of on a one-man crusade.
He did, but it wasn't as much of a one-man crusade as Trent Alexander-Arnold because I gave him man of the match. But yeah, no, but Mane ran in close. He wasn't the only one. I think most of the Liverpool players were very good on the night. In fact, there was no bad performances, which is very unusual for any team. Normally, you'll get one who's quite below par. I mean, you even look at, Firmino's not at his best at the moment, but he did quite well. Certainly in the second goal, keeping the ball up, and he keeps on creating space for the others to run into. But going back to Mane, yeah, he's just. It is like he's just taking everything on by himself. It's like every single year, as you've said, he gets better. Bear in mind, this player came from Southampton, and at the time, people thought, well, 30 million pounds? 30 million pounds is a lot of money. And I remember seeing him. I think it was Burton in the League Cup. I think it was. He scored twice, and okay, I know it was them were a championship team, but he was just pulling out all the tricks, and he was just knocking players over. And you're thinking, oh, they might have somebody here, and he's somebody who. The fact that Salah had a good game, I thought as well last night, and if you've got those two doing that, it's hard to keep one of them quiet, let alone two. So if you concentrate on one, like I think Arsenal tried to do in the second half, I think 2 or 3 of their players got booked for fouling Mane, and I think probably the reason he came off was to stop himself getting sent off if he reacted to any of these challenges. So if you remember, it was the Atletico Madrid game, wasn't it? In the Champions League first leg. He got substituted then, so obviously there's a certain spark to the way Mane approaches the game. But overall, you'd have to argue at the moment, is there a better player in the Premier League than him?
No, I think that certainly is a fair shout. Let's talk about Trent then. Come back to you, Doyle, on Trent. As you say, you gave him man of the match. That first half, he really was unplayable.
He was, if you bear in mind as well, that the Leeds game, the first game of the season, he wasn't particularly great, but he'd come back from injury because he'd obviously missed the Community Shield. He'd missed a large part of the warm-up program as well. So he's still getting up to speed. But, last night, he said all of his, it wasn't just his deliveries either as well. You look at Andy Robertson from his corners on the left, they caused a lot of problems. So the fact that Liverpool's second goal came from a Trent cross to Robertson was, in some ways, the epitome of the way Klopp likes to play football, with such an attacking onus on the fullbacks, and for both of them to be up there, in and around the 18-yard box, that's just the way that Klopp wants Liverpool to play the game. And Arsenal haven't exactly got two slouches in their fullback positions with Tierney and Bellerin, but I thought Tierney did okay in the first half with Salah, but for the equaliser, Salah got the other side of him, and then that's what Salah can do, even when he's not having his best game at the beginning. He can bring something out of nothing. That's what Trent can do as well. Yeah, he's shot to hit the bar. He was unlucky there. So it's it's not, a lot of people have said it, but just the way that Trent passes the ball, it sounds ridiculous, but just the way he strikes the ball. If you're a footballer, I've spoken to obviously lots of footballers, and they just love the way that he hits it. And that was a little bit like Steven Gerrard when he used to play. He used to have a certain way of striking it. And, there are very, very few players who can do that. And when you've got the vision that Trent's got and the engine as well, and he did okay defensively as well, then that you've got yourself a player there that, what is he, still 21? He's only going to keep getting better. And if he's anything like Sadio Mane, by the time he gets to 28 and 29, could the best player in the world be a right back?
Well, I suppose we're only going to wait and find out. But Joe, on Trent, there was a ball he played in the first half where I think it was either a corner or a free kick. It had been headed out of the box. Van Dijk was forward, and Trent was running back to get the ball. He sort of swiveled and first time just put this ball in towards Van Dijk. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, he does things that you don't expect from any player on the pitch, never mind the right back. He is out of this world. I think we almost take him for granted a little bit. I think you always do when you have a homegrown talent. They don't come in for a massive fee, but he's an outrageous player, and he's just to have such great weapons from right back and left back. It's an element which I don't think there's any other team in the world that has such a. Bayern Munich perhaps are the only other one, but that has such attacking options, because if Liverpool's front three don't get you, then one of the fullbacks will. And to see Andy Robertson coming in on the back post last night, I thought was really satisfying, because you don't see many fullbacks do that. And I think the only thing possibly like to see, and this is really nitpicking from the two of them, is maybe a few more goals from the two of them. Trent gets a few from free kicks, but if they can come in at the back post, wouldn't that be lovely? And Trent crossing for Robertson to do that last night was really great to see. So I think Pep Mendes said it's their favourite type of goal when the two fullbacks combined. So yeah, I can understand why, because it really was satisfying, and it just shows why Liverpool overwhelmed so many teams, because they just don't know what to do they? How do you stop the front three? How do you stop Firmino? How do you stop the two fullbacks? And now Liverpool are midfielders who can, if it's not Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain or Naby Keita, Fabinho started to score some goals, and now they've brought in Thiago. So Liverpool have got weapons all over the pitch. And finally, just to finish, Diogo Jota's introduction last night, I just thought was personally for me, it was the highlight of the match, because I just thought he was brilliant. I just thought, we talked about, I think Sean mentioned in a podcast recently about, and I realise I'm sort of hijacking the agenda here, because I'm sure you want to ask about Diogo Jota, but I was just so thrilled with. I remember Sean talking about Carabao coming off the bench. I think he was against West Ham all those years ago, and making such a great impression. And Jota did the same. He just came straight in. He was involved in everything. And all right, he missed a good chance, and Salah took one off his foot, but he was just there and involved, and it was no surprise he scored, because he put himself in all those dangerous areas. So that was great to see as well. So. Yeah, so enthused by the amount of weapons Liverpool have to beat teams.
Yeah, and that's the thing on Diogo Jota, isn't it, Sean? That Jurgen Klopp was saying after the game that he's obviously nowhere near up to full speed with what Liverpool do, but it seems such a natural transfer for Liverpool to have made that he comes on for 10 minutes and possibly could have had himself a hat-trick.
It was mad. And to be honest, I think there was a little bit of pressure on him, because he'd come on for Mane, who obviously didn't really like the fact that he'd been taken off. He kind of made that quite clear, did he, with his reactions? He was subbed. So there's a little bit of pressure on him there. One of the best players on the pitch has gone off, and the game's not won. It harks back a little bit to that Curtis Jones substitution against Leeds. I wouldn't be surprised if Klopp was thinking, well, let's see what this guy's all about. Obviously, come on against Lincoln and had a bit of a run around there, but this was a bit more of a substantial game and a bigger moment for him. And yeah, he was great. I think, like Joe says, you couldn't really ask for a more exciting cameo. He probably should have scored 2 and could have scored 3, as you say. But yeah, I think the best thing was he was getting in positions for chances. Obviously Liverpool were on top; they were well on top for the whole game. But I don't think Arsenal were particularly ragged. It wasn't like Arsenal were doing badly and were letting him in. I think he was just cleverly finding space, and that's really what you want to see, isn't it? From a forward, okay, maybe he could have tucked away the one that Salah fizzed into him with a really good ball into the area, hit the side netting. Would have liked to have seen that gone in, but you can't really complain. And I think as well, he comes out of it now with his goal, with a reference point, with something to build on. Again, like Thiago, he had that 45 minutes against Chelsea, and all right, he's out at the moment. We hope with just something minor, and he'll be back soon. But both of those new lads, and also Tsimikas, who we've seen, have got their debut out the way, have impressed, and look like they're going to settle in quickly, which is what we all want to see.
And Doyle, do we now just see the sort of full strength that Liverpool do have? Because when you take into account Jordan Henderson, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Thiago, Matip all weren't involved in the matchday squad, and Diogo Jota comes off the bench and gets his goal, you are now beginning to sort of see just sort of how deep this Liverpool squad is to challenge even maybe in a truncated season like this on all fronts.
Yeah, I won't be rushing too far ahead, though. There's still, it's very rare that you have. I know they've got 3 players injured who are all in the same position. 4, actually. They got Matip as well. So they do have a big squad, but they probably will lose some of them in the coming weeks, whether it's on a permanent transfer. It looks the likes of, Grujic and Wilson were involved in the League Cup game last week. They could go. There's 1 or 2 others who might leave as well on loan. So it's a tricky one because some of the players are probably thinking, well, after this League Cup, we might not be playing for ages. Because if Liverpool do beat Arsenal in the League Cup on Thursday, the next round isn't until just before Christmas. When they come back, it's Champions League, international breaks, this, that, and the other. So that's another reason why Liverpool, it's good that they're getting these points on the board, because when they do come back, I would imagine that the rotation won't be, well, they certainly won't be rotating 10 or 11 players out of the team to play in the Champions League, will they? So that's when people are going to become more involved, where the likes of Jota will be playing in the Premier League and starting games. So that's where the actual test of the squad strength will be. I mean, just going back to Jota, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I don't think, in reality, many Liverpool fans, even though he played for Wolves for a couple of years, know that much about him. I know that Sean's a massive fan. We did a piece, it was about 15 months ago, where we said, which player would you like to take from another Premier League team, and Sean said Jota. So well done to him for that one. A rare piece of insight there from my colleague. I think I said Felipe Anderson, which kind of suggests I don't know anything about football. Although I do quite like Anderson, actually. But anyway, yeah, going back to, he couldn't have done much more on this performance. It was a slight contrast to the one at Lincoln, where I think Klopp just said to him, just go out and just do what you want. And I'm not sure whether or not the extra few days training with the first teams helped him, because it did seem as though he was instantly, as Sean said, linking up with some of his teammates, and the fact that Mane was a bit annoyed when he went off, I don't think that would have made any impact whatsoever. I think even if Mane had been doing cartwheels when he was going off the pitch, I think Jota would have still been desperate to get out there and do something. So I mean, it couldn't have gone much better for him, but it's early days, and as Klopp has said, if he is going to be playing most of the times he'll be playing will be on the left. So it looks like it's going to be either or on the left between those two for the moment.
Yeah, certainly. I suppose it could even be exciting if seeing maybe Sadio Mane go through the middle at times, Joe, as well. But on the sort of squad strength and the depth of it for Liverpool, it seems to be genuine world-class options that Jurgen Klopp has 15, 16, 17 of, and that when certain players are going to be coming into this squad, there really isn't going to be a drop-off at all in the quality that he's going to have to choose from.
Yeah, I think the best example of that is once everyone's fit, which, the exciting prospect is probably the bench. I mean, I can't imagine, last night Oxlade-Chamberlain was out, Matip was out, Thiago was out, but all of those players put on the bench, you've got such strength and depth. Liverpool are going to be in a lucky position, and I think one of the things that has been levelled at Liverpool right throughout probably Klopp's reign is, do they have a bench that's as strong as some of their rivals? But once people are fit, they'll have a bench just as strong, if not stronger, than pretty much all the teams in the Premier League. So, and they've got so many players who can play in different positions. I think the great thing about someone like Jota is, he is so versatile, and like you said, frees up other people to go and play in different positions. They've now got Fabinho who can play in midfield or in defence. Looked quite accomplished in defence against Chelsea, and just slotted back into midfield and was as good as he ever was last night. And Jurgen Klopp can just move things around as he wants. So I think when we see that bench with everyone fit on it, it will be a difficult one. And Klopp's life's going to get quite difficult, isn't it? Because he's going to have to try and pick a team and get some of these guys in it. And I don't know how he's going to do it, because I think a lot of people will be pushing for places. It's going to be interesting. It gives him so many options across different competitions. He can rotate a little bit more. I think we'll see different lineups and different formations for Champions League, and it just means Liverpool can compete in different competitions a lot better. I think Pep Lijnders said it himself, didn't he, ahead of the last press conference ahead of the greatest
Oh, what a
in the world of football, which he said. Sorry?
No, you just cut out there as you were going to say the greatest cup competition. I said, what a timely place to cut out, but you are back now.
I'm glad I'm back, because I did try and say that in the press conference before the greatest cup competition in the world of football. Pep Lijnders said that Liverpool can now compete for the FA Cup and the greatest competition in the world of football. So with Liverpool having such a good squad, it means that they can pick teams that can suit all competitions. So, I think this is where, without being greedy, they won the Champions League in 2019, the Premier League this year. I think they should start eyeing multiple trophies this year.
I can't remember when Pep Lijnders did the Champions League pre-match final press conference, but I have to maybe go back and try and find that one. But yeah,
someone pointed out to me the other day, the League Cup has 3 handles. 3 handles. What can you not love about that? It's one more handle than any other trophy, isn't it? So,
for a League Cup aficionado like yourself, I thought you would have known that it had 3 handles.
My cup's only got 1 handle, so what does that mean?
That means it's not very good. The Community Shield doesn't even have any. That says a lot, doesn't it? There you go. Great fun.
Yeah, the World Cup doesn't have any either, so that mustn't be too much either. But anyway, that's because
international football doesn't count. It's rubbish. They should count.
Yeah, true. Let's get off talking about how many handles trophies have, equating to how prestigious they are. And Sean, looking at sort of just some statistics and even sort of on the significance of this result, and I suppose the performance as well against Arsenal, coming off the back of Manchester City suffering their first defeat of this season, it sort of all just seems to underline that Liverpool wanted to sort of lay down an early mark, which they certainly did.
Massively. I know we touched on City before, but and yeah, it is very, very early days. You can't write them off, but I do think they've got real problems compared to the cohesion and complete nature of Liverpool's performance. I thought City really, well, obviously they struggled at the weekend, but like they've got problems. They appear to be throwing money at them again, which is usually the solution, isn't it? But two things struck me really. There were just the lack of leaders on the pitch. I think that's one thing you could always say about Liverpool. There's so many players who could be captains. There's obviously Milner, Henderson, but everyone like Wijnaldum, Van Dijk. There's so many leaders. There's loads of players who play big roles internationally. I just thought City were so rudderless on the pitch when they were behind at the weekend, and also just like they were quite slow to change things in any meaningful way. And I thought it was screaming out to bring De Bruyne a bit further back, because he just looked like quite stranded when he was high up the pitch. No one was getting the ball to him. And I think this is the thing. Like we've just talked about Liverpool's strength and their depth now. And as Joe said before, like when the bench is going to be quite exciting and there's genuine options to come off and come on as a sub and change the game, it does change the picture a little bit. So yeah, I mean, there's in the league this could make a difference, but also across multiple competitions. So yeah, very, very exciting.
On that rudderless point that Sean makes then, Doyle, I make it 5 times last season Liverpool conceded the opening goal and came back and won the match. Obviously, they did it last night as well, and albeit City took the lead against Leicester, but as soon as they fell behind in that game, you sort of could see the writing on the wall. With Liverpool on Monday night, it didn't feel like that. As soon as they went behind, it was an error that gifted Arsenal the goal. It was like, well, Liverpool will now get into their sort of shape and they'll knock Arsenal about and they'll get the goals that they need to win this game, and that's how it played out.
To be fair, Leicester are a better team than Arsenal at the moment, and I know Arsenal beat Leicester in the Carabao Cup, but that wasn't really the proper teams, was it? Well, just look at the table from last year. Leicester were way better than Arsenal, and they will finish above them again this year. Sorry, right. However, going back to your point, why were Liverpool able to come from behind? Because they know how to win games. They know they can win games from that position. They've done it, 4 or 5 times last season, you said. So they know they can do it, and they've done it against top teams and Arsenal.
Yeah, and Tottenham. Yeah,
I'm really sorry. It's too easy. It's really too easy. I'd like to apologise.
Kick him out whilst he's down. Yeah, certainly the best way. But also, just another one I wanted to pick out, Joe, and just talk about was since the beginning of last season now, Man City have lost 10 games. Liverpool have won 35 of the 41 games since the beginning of last season. We talk about City as the nearest challengers, but there just seem to be a gulf between the two sides right now.
Yeah, I saw Andrew Beasley tweeted something like they've lost 10 in the last however many years, and Liverpool have lost 2 in the last 2 years, something like that. It was a crazy stat, which that probably wasn't it, but yeah. Anyway, I totally forgot what the stat was, but it was good. It was good. Go look at Andrew Beasley's tweets. I haven't done him justice there, but I find City quite bizarre because I think Pep Guardiola is one of those managers that I think Liverpool fans have enjoyed sort of taking aim at times, and it's easy to dismiss City as a checkbook club who, just solve their problems with money. And I didn't think that was the case for a long time in terms of Pep was such a supreme coach and the way they played under him. But I think it has got to a stage now where I think he's running out of ideas on how to solve that defensive problem, and they just do seem to be throwing money at the problem. I mean, did they get enough criticism for how expensive such a poor defence actually is? I mean, you look at the two fullbacks. Liverpool's fullbacks cost 10 million between them. Manchester City's fullbacks were like £100 million worth of fullbacks, and they looked dreadful, like unable to do the basics of what they were meant to be doing. And then the centre halves, well, Nathan Ake cost 41 million, but this summer we've said Liverpool should go out and buy a centre half. And I think Liverpool would probably be better off with Fabinho playing all season at centre half than buying someone like Nathan Ake. And I think that underlines why Liverpool just don't go out and just spend money willy-nilly, because I don't think there's just the quality out there unless they do their homework to such an extent. So it'd be interesting to see how good this Ruben Dias is. But they've spent big money on defenders before, and I'm not convinced that they're going to get it right again. So yeah, and I think it also underlines how good Liverpool are at the fact that their fullbacks can do so much so high up the pitch, yet not. Last night I know Robertson made a mistake, but in general keep things so tight at the other end of the pitch, because City seem to be buying very attacking fullbacks who are very good going forward but struggle badly when it comes to the defensive side of things. So I think that underlines just the great work that the Klopp and his coaches do on the training ground, and it's great credit to him and his team, because Pep really does seem to be struggling with that.
Well,
go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, here's a little thing then, just very quickly. Would you prefer to say Arsenal have got better defensively over the past 9 months, Guy? You watch them. So Arsenal have got better, yeah, defensively, yeah. And Man City
about the same scoreline as last season.
But they were better defensively overall. They have been. And City have got worse. And has anybody left Man City to go to Arsenal in that time? Any coach? You do wonder whether Arteta strengthening Arsenal has weakened Manchester City in the sense of the defensive, resolve and organisation, because it's clear that Arteta knows what he's doing, and he's probably learned that from being with, I can tell you now, from being with David Moyes at Everton for a number of years, because at the time Everton were always very hard to beat, and I think that's something that's overlooked. I'm also not going to go into I'm not going to join in the City bashing, because they've got all the players that when they click, they can just blow everybody away. I mean, Liverpool got beat 4-0 by them only a couple of months ago, so I don't think anybody should be writing them off anytime soon. But you don't lose 5-2 at home against a team that's slightly better than Arsenal, though.
One last little bit of City bashing, and it's not really City bashing. It's more pro Liverpool. But I do think that whole defensive recruitment thing is an interesting point, because there was a time when I worried slightly about Liverpool's piecemeal approach really to squad building, and it wasn't anything that was really their fault. It was just like the nature of waiting and being patient to get top targets, namely really Alisson and Van Dijk, rather than compromising and getting a slightly different solution. But I think that patient approach has shown to be successful. And like Joe said, I think the overall spend on defenders under Guardiola at City topped 400 million. 4 million is not a lot of money when this new lad's factored in. And that's a hell of a lot of money, but it's also a hell of a lot of new faces arriving in the squad. And what you can say about Liverpool is their defence knows each other very, very well. I think, going back to what I was saying before as well about leadership, I don't think City have really ever replaced Company, kind of on or off the pitch, and that's a big issue for them. But Doyle's also obviously right that this City team will fire this season. They'll click at times, so you can't write them off just yet. But there are certainly advantages that Liverpool have over them, and hopefully they can hammer them home.
Yeah, I just want to make clear. Sorry, I just want to make clear. I wasn't City bashing. I'm actually, a huge fan of Pep Guardiola, and sometimes I think that fans, dismiss him all too easily because they say, "Oh, he spends this, that, and the other." But he's an absolutely brilliant coach, and his trophy haul attests to that, doesn't it? I just think that they've got a big issue there, and they have thrown a lot of money at the problem, and they're no closer to solving it. And if anything, seems to be getting worse. So I do think a lot of credit should go to Liverpool for the way that they've gone about solving their issues, which hasn't just been about spending. It has been a lot of work on the training ground. And City, they looked all over the shop against Leicester. And, I think Liverpool got beat 4-0 by City, fair play. But, Liverpool don't often get beat at home by a team like Leicester by that sort of scoreline. And, it's Clarke. And it's an interesting point what Doyle Arteta, because you do remember, there were times when Liverpool lost assistant managers, and they're not too distant history that obviously had a big impact on them. Paco Ayestaran seemed to have an impact when he left, and Patrice Bergs when he left Houllier. So, I think sometimes it's to get that Pep has lost one of his most key men in Arteta. So it's significantly weakened City by the looks of things.
Yeah, let's just round up. Andrew Beasley actually tweeted saying Man City have lost 10 of their last 36 league games. Liverpool have lost 10 of their last 128. So yeah, that's doing the stat justice. Yeah, it was good. It was worth the wait.
I think I said something like that, didn't I?
yeah, something like that one.
I've been looking for it for the past 5 minutes. I don't know how you found it so far.
His internet's working, that's why.
Yeah, that's help. Doyle, though, on the title race, so we're 3 games in. Surely it's too early to be talking about that. But could there be the possibility that it's not Man City who challenge Liverpool, or are we only looking to Pep Guardiola's side?
Well, there's a possibility, and I think there'll still be a number of teams in it going into February or March, unless Liverpool just win every single game again, which I don't think will happen. In fact, to be honest, I think there will be some daft. Well, we just saw a daft result at the City-Leicester game. I think there'll be quite a few more daft ones because of the lack of crowd. I think that the home advantage, obviously I'm fortunate enough to get to almost all of the Liverpool games, and with no crowd, I mean, obviously it helps that you're around an environment that but once the game gets going, there's still a pitch, and the rules are still the same. It's a ball, the players are the same number of players, all this, that, and the other, and there's no other distractions because the crowd isn't there. So I do think there'll be more strange results. I think Liverpool could probably afford to lose 5 or 6 games this season and still win the league. In fact, whoever wins it, I can't see. There's only Liverpool could go off and do what Liverpool and City have done over the last few years, what Chelsea did a couple of years ago, what United used to do by winning it easily. No one else is going to do that. So if Liverpool do it, that's it. They're just going to go and run away with it like they did last season. But I don't necessarily think that'll happen, as I said before, when the Champions League starts and the European football comes. And I think Liverpool, that's the proper test of the strength of their squad and for everybody else as well, which is fit. If Everton just keep on playing the way that they're playing, because they've got no Europe. I mean, if they're still in and around December or January, I'm not saying they're going to win the league, but they could prove a bit of a problem for some of the other teams. So that's why I think that there'll be a number of defeats. I think City are still the team that could beat Liverpool. Chelsea are probably the only ones who might come up and threaten. And only if they actually sign some players the next week, United could do it as well.
Sean, I think 3 weeks off till the first Merseyside derby of the season after the international break, trip to Goodison. Are they going to be in the conversation?
I certainly think that the point about having no European football is a big one, like this season more than any. But we've seen how that can have an impact. Like Leicester, even Liverpool in 2013-14, they had a real charge at the title, didn't they? And it does help. And then this season, you're talking about an even more truncated and condensed schedule. So possibly, yeah. I mean, well, the derby's right there, isn't it? It's the next kind of acid test for them. What I would say is Everton kind of keep passing their tests. Like, at the start of the season, they had an absolutely ridiculous record in terms of not having won away at the top four, if you like. And then they got that win. It was big. They backed it up with another win. They've won their cup games. They've won away again at Palace. Who they got this weekend? Is it Brighton at home? So
Brighton, yeah.
As good as they looked against United, you'd expect them to win. So I think you're going to get a situation where Liverpool and Everton go into the derby, possibly 1 and 2 in the league. I would imagine both having won their first 4 games. So it's the biggest derby in quite a long time. So yeah, we shall see. I think from an Echo perspective, maybe 3-3, something like that would do. So everyone's happy. We can just move on.
0-0. 0-0 if you're going to draw. Yeah, 0-0.
They are often tight affairs, aren't they, at Goodison Park? But before we go, Joe, best give you a chance to speak about the 3-handled Carabao Cup. Of course, Arsenal coming back to Anfield on Thursday. What are we thinking? This is going to be a one-man preview of the game. What are we thinking ahead of that one?
Well, this is the big one, isn't it, of the week? Forget last night. You're trying to beat Arsenal. Both teams will put out, a much stronger team than they did last night. Do you know what? It's going to be interesting. I was thinking to myself this morning, who are Liverpool going to play at centre half? Because you look at it and think, I mean, Van Dijk plays almost every game, and I think Klopp sort of alluded to the fact that he didn't really want to play him at Lincoln, but for Van Dijk saying, look, I'm fit and healthy and I want to play. But will he be so keen to play him 2 days after they've played Arsenal and 2 days before they play Aston Villa? I'm not so sure. And then if he doesn't play him, then does he play a couple of youngsters, which is always difficult, isn't it, if you play, 2 very inexperienced players alongside each other. So I think that's the big area, which I'm really interested to see what he does. I think perhaps he might play someone like Fabinho alongside Reece Williams or essentially Sepp van den Berg. But yeah, I mean, look, I don't know why you all aren't more excited about the League Cup. It's a chance to see Liverpool and other teams play some of the players that don't play as much. This is in all seriousness. I find it quite interesting because you get to see those players, and it seems more of a free hit. It seems to offer up more exciting games. And you all know my feelings. When we get round to the FA Cup, it just all feels a lot more serious. And if you play Reece Williams at the back, Liverpool gets slaughtered for it. Whereas in the League Cup, it seems everyone's quite happy and they just want to have a little look at him. So, I thought the Lincoln game was very interesting, and I think it was quite enjoyable to watch as a supporter. So I look forward to this game. And if it's anything like last season, that wasn't too bad, was it? So you can all just shut up.
The last round at Lincoln, of course, was a goal of the season contest within itself as well. So yeah, that wouldn't go missing. Maybe another 5-5 draw. Let's pick our teams though. Then, in all seriousness, because as you say, Joe, chance to see some squad players, but also some selection dilemmas, even certainly at the back for Liverpool. I take it we're all sort of in agreement that Adrian will be between the sticks for the Reds. Doyle, do you want to throw in any random goalkeepers in that position, or are you happy with that?
Well, it's not random because Kelleher played in competition last season in a couple of games, but I think Adrian will play. Yeah.
What about the back four then, Sean? I'll let you go with the back four because it's going to be quite some sort of decision for Jurgen Klopp to make.
It is a difficult one. I mean, obviously Gomez is back now, so he's got that extra option. Came through unscathed and looked good. I think the fullbacks are easy. I'd stick with Tsimikas and Williams. But then, yeah, it is a different proposition to Lincoln, isn't it? So I think you're going to need a senior man there. Just stick with Van Dijk and Williams. I think I probably would. And then maybe look to do something like he did in terms of bringing someone else on in place of Van Dijk in the second half, maybe Gomez this time. But yeah, I think Van Dijk's just the Rolls Royce, isn't he? He can just tick through these games, and giving him a half here, I think would be okay, especially presuming that Arsenal are going to rotate a little bit and it'll be slightly lesser opposition that it'll be up against. So yeah, I think I'd go with that.
Doyle, what do you think for the back four?
Well, the fullbacks are going to be the fullbacks, Tsimikas and Williams. And I think we had this conversation before the Lincoln game where if you're going to play such a strong team elsewhere, it seems a bit daft to undermine it by not playing a solid centre-back pairing. And I know they surprised us by playing Van Dijk against Lincoln alongside Reece Williams, but wouldn't play Van Dijk this time. I'd go with Fabinho and Gomez, to be honest. I'd play the pair of them. And then if things are going okay second half, then you can give Reece Williams or Sepp van den Berg a little bit more time. But yeah, but the fact of the matter is that after this game, as I said before, the quarterfinals, because they'd be in the quarterfinals if they win, they aren't until like December the 20th or something stupid like that. So this is like a chance just to get far in the competition and know that you've got a big game coming a long way down the line.
Is there a risk, though, playing Fabinho, that if maybe Jordan Henderson and Thiago are both still unavailable for Aston Villa, that if Fabinho were to pick up a strain or anything, Joe, that then he wouldn't be about for the Villa game?
Of course, yeah. There's a risk, but then there's a risk that Van Dijk gets injured. There's a risk that Joe Gomez, who has injury problems himself, playing 2, potentially 3 games in a week, he could get injured. So I think whichever one you go for is a risk. Personally, I'm with Doyle. I'd go for Fabinho. I'd be tempted for Gomez, but I think I'd go for Reece Williams just because I think Gomez coming back from an injury to play 3 games in a week might be just a little bit too much for him. So Fabinho and Reece Williams would be my pairing, and of course, fullbacks are the fullbacks.
Your midfield 3, Joe. Let you go with them.
James Milner will play. Curtis Jones will play. I wonder whether he'll play Minamino a touch deeper. Played very well in the last game. Those 3.
Doyle, what are you saying? Shaqiri looked quite good in the midfield against Lincoln.
He did, but we don't know whether he's injured or not because he went off, didn't he, with a tiny... I know Klopp said he made a mistake subbing him, but I was a bit surprised he wasn't on the bench last night, to be honest. Thought it was a little bit harsh if he has been left out just purely on form because he played such a good game. So if he's fit, then I'd play Milner and Jones as well, yeah, because I don't think Grujic will be added this time. But if Shaqiri's not fit, which we'll come to in a bit, if Shaqiri is fit, which we'll come to in a bit, you'll see what happens with the front 3. But if he's not fit, I'd play Minamino in a deeper role as well.
And Sean?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, I'd love to see Grujic again, but obviously if there is the potential for him to be leaving at some point very soon, if a deal does get done, perhaps it's a bit much to play him in this one. So yeah, I think I'd go with that. Shaqiri again if he's fit, just to see if that was a fluke, really, that really good performance, albeit against lower league opposition, in a deeper role. Down there again, see what happens. Jones and then probably Milner in a slightly unfamiliar deeper role, but I'm sure he can pull that off.
Doyle, you've teased us with the forward 3 then. Who are you lining up at the top end of the pitch?
Well, if Shaqiri's not fit and Minamino's in midfield, the rest of the 3 are straightforward. It's Jota on the left, Origi down the middle, and Harvey Elliott on the right. But it's if Shaqiri plays, then where do you fit them all in? And if you go by position, you'd have to put Minamino down the middle, Jota on the left, and Elliott down the right. But there's absolutely no way Origi's not going to be starting. So how does he fit in? And then you're looking, well, can Origi go down the right? Or can Minamino go down the right? It's a tough ask, but I'm just assuming Shaqiri's not playing, so that makes it easier for me.
Joe, what selection dilemmas have you got at the top end of the pitch?
Yeah, I like Minamino in central areas, and I wouldn't want to push him wide. So yeah, I like Doyle. I'm going to assume that Shaqiri is injured and have Minamino in midfield, and yeah, Origi through the middle, Jota first full start on the left, and Harvey Elliott on the right. But it'd be interesting to see whether he does pick someone like Grujic, because if he does, then perhaps that might hint to you that there isn't too much interest in him before the deadline, and whether Shaqiri's fit or it's going to be an interesting lineup. This is why the League Cup's so much fun. It's hard to even pick a team.
And Sean, finally, you on the front 3?
So I've put Shaqiri in midfield, haven't I? So he's not an option. Minamino. Where to put Minamino? I'm going to say Origi down the middle, Minamino on the right, and Jota on the left, which feels a bit harsh on Harvey Elliott. But I guess if Shaqiri isn't available, you rejig it, you put Elliott on the right, and it resolves that way. But yeah, I think Origi, he had a couple of runs, didn't he, down the middle in this competition and others last season. So try him there again, see what happens.
And finally, quick prediction then. Sean, go round from you. Sean, Joe and Doyle, if you want to kick us off, Sean.
Well, I'm going to say 6-3, and I'll explain this. Because we talked in Friday's pod about 2007 when there was those 2 crazy games in succession. My hope was that the results would flip. Well, the first one has, because I think Liverpool lost 3-1 in the FA Cup to Arsenal back then. They've won 3-1. So, yeah, it follows that it must be 6-3 on Thursday.
Joe?
No, I'm not silly. 5-5 Liverpool on pens. It happened last season.
Well, to ruin my joke, I was going to say 7-all, but I'll be the sensible one for once. 3-2 to Liverpool. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It could be anything. It could literally be any scoreline because we don't even know. I mean, a bit of Arsenal insight. Is Martinelli fit?
No,
he's not. Okay, right, Liverpool.
No, Jimmy. He had a big knee injury during Project Restart. So no, he's out for quite a while. But anyway, they just bought some Icelandic goalkeeper. I think he is Runarsson, who's coming from Nice. So it'll be a debut for him between the sticks. So we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But
I picked the Arsenal team. We may as well.
Pick the Arsenal team.
No, so we know what to expect.
I've genuinely no idea where he goes with that. But anyway, that's it from us here for this edition of the Blood Red podcast. Of course, keep across the Liverpool Echo, certainly for the game on Thursday night. There's also the link to our twice daily newsletter in the description of this podcast. If you give us your email address, we can send you our top Liverpool stories directly to your inbox. But from myself, Guy Clarke, Ian Doyle, Joe Rimmer and Sean Bradbury, thanks for joining us for this edition of Blood Red. It's bye for now.